Welcome to Upwards, sponsored by the Microsoft Aspire Experience, where we share stories and insights to help you grow 1% better in your personal and professional life every episode. Here are your hosts for today's episode, Zach Zhu and Jay Lee.
Welcome, Upwardians! And I'm going to pass it off to my lovely co-host, Jay. Please introduce our fantastic guest that we have today.
Yeah, today on the podcast, we have with us Miss Holly Beale, who is an absolute champion at advocating for sustainability in all the communities that she's a part of. So she's currently a senior program manager here at Microsoft, focusing on data center environmental sustainability, but she also leads a worldwide sustainability community and has many, many cool initiatives over there. So welcome, Holly. Happy to have you on the show. Could you tell us a little bit about you and your career journey so far for our audience who is listening in?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. This is a really exciting opportunity. Yeah, I lead a global sustainability program at Microsoft. And the coolest part about that is that I got to make it up. It really is my dream job because I got to create it. And that really happened because I guess I'll try to do this quickly, but start at the beginning. In college, deciding what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something related to sustainability in my life, but I didn't actually realize that that could be a job. I went to business school and I didn't realize it could be a job in business. I thought the choices were work in a nonprofit and, don't make too much money, but do something that you care about, or work in a corporation, sell your soul, do terrible things, but then you can volunteer on the side and make it that way. And so,
too real.
But it turns out that that's not really true, that those aren't the only two options. But at the time I spoke with a professor who said that I should go into the corporate world at first, get some experience, and then I can join a nonprofit at a higher level and make more impact there. Once I can come in at a level where I'm actually able to do something and people listen to me because I have a little bit of credibility. So that's what I decided to do. Joined Microsoft, was in something not related to sustainability, but started to just do as much as I could around sustainability in the role that I did have. And then basically light bulb moment went off for me at one point that I can do sustainability work at Microsoft, at one of the biggest, most powerful companies in the world, and have these levers to pull that can actually make a huge impact in the world. And actually corporations are where a lot of good can happen. It's where a lot of bad can happen, but it is also a place where we can pull huge sustainability levers. So yeah, happy to be here and happy to go into more detail on any of that.
Oh, 1,000%. We here at Upwards love story time. And I know you have a little bit of a story about getting a green cafe over at Microsoft and kind of that entire beginning sustainability connected community story. It would be awesome if you could tell our audience about it.
Yeah, so I was in services at Microsoft. And so I was just doing things around the office, like I started in Charlotte and we had free unlimited Dasani water bottles. And so first I tried just like putting up signs on the vending machines around like the impacts of bottled water and, pulling it out of countries where it should stay and shipping it around the world and all those issues. But then I was like, you know what, why don't I work with facilities and try to provide alternatives? So we provided mugs to everyone in the office and like filtered water and got the water bottle dispenser removed. So I was like, all right, you can actually do something at this company and make a difference, even though that has nothing to do with your role, your daily role. So the other thing, when I moved to Seattle to work in the Redmond office and really saw the amount of waste that we were generating, which was just enormous. I mean, everything there is single-use disposable. And yes, it's compostable, but you still have to create all of those materials, which have a huge impact in manufacturing those goods, transporting those goods. Every step of the process has a big environmental impact that if you do studies on it, you can tell that Reusables, durables are almost always better. It depends how many times you use it. I mean, if you use it one time and throw it away, that's not better. But if you use it, there's always a break-even point. So I talked to facilities many times, just like went all the way up the chain to like head of facilities and met with him. And first I asked about the amount of waste we had. They didn't know. They had never tracked it. So I asked for the funding to run a study with this organization called Clean Water Fund and Rethink Disposables to look at what was the waste we were generating, what were the impacts of that, and what were some alternatives, some ideas to do things differently. So met with that group, met with different facilities, people all over facilities throughout Microsoft many times, heard all of their reasons why it would never work, and just, noted all of those reasons why it couldn't work and just tried to figure out solutions for every single one. And then worked with this team. Again, this was not my job at all, but worked with the Clean Water Fund team to do a study, and we came up with the numbers of how much waste we were generating, what the environmental impact of that was, and what some options were, and what the cost was for that. So then I presented that at a conference, and, the facilities people were there and kind of their like jaws dropped over when they saw the environmental impacts of all of these disposables, especially even what they do to the compost stream, where it's supposed to be like creating nice, rich compost that comes out of compost stream, but it's super contaminated with all these things that aren't actually valuable. Anyway, so that led to the creation of the first Zero Waste Cafe. So that's on the main campus in Redmond. It's a fully reusable cafe. It's really exciting, really beautiful. I don't know if it's back open now, but that was just really empowering and pretty incredible to see what's possible. And then Drew stepped in to help talk to those folks there about what we can do to implement this. So it's just a really cool story that I like for employees to hear, because it's kind of empowering. You don't have to have sustainability in your job title to make change. And if you put the effort into making something happen, like make it really easy for people to say yes, and you can make a difference.
And not only that, you don't have to go out and lead a huge effort either. You can just, in your local groups, local circles, get your managers on board, get your friends at work on board to, not use that plastic cup in the office or the compostable cup in the office, and bring your own water bottle and mug. I remember when I was back in the office, we had the mugs in the common areas that people would donate for people to use coffee, which was brilliant.
Yeah. That was one of the first Action Box projects, which Action Box is the repository of employee-led sustainability projects across the company. Because I was first tracking this with the PowerPoint of like different projects that different employees were working on when we were a really tiny group, that there were like 6 of us that were working on sustainability stuff. And Microsoft like trying to get us to not print receipts for all the transactions, because that's just very unnecessary. And so we created the Action Box to hold all those projects. And one of the first ones was a Mug's Life, which then was building little shelves to put in each of the common areas, and people bring in mugs to reuse it. But when you put the onus on the individual to bring their own mug and stuff, it's so much harder to do that and like tell every single person to do it than just like make it the easiest and hopefully only, but almost only in whatever case that it makes sense option. So like just not having disposables as even an option, but or maybe like in extenuating circumstances, but have it be the default is the most sustainable option. And that could apply to many different topics.
Yeah, totally. And going along the theme of how Holly creates stuff, you created your current job role. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you pivoted around?
Yeah, so I was on the energy team. So I was in cloud operations and innovation. I was working on the energy strategy and research team. And that actually happened because I was talking to different people within Microsoft who worked in sustainability. This was 2015, probably, when I was still in services. And I was talking to different people at Microsoft about what we're doing in sustainability and just like trying to figure out how I could help. I wasn't trying to get a job. I was just figuring out how to help in whatever way I could. And I talked to our director of energy strategy, And then he had a role opening on his team a little later on. And so he actually contacted me and see if I'd be interested in joining the team. And I said, absolutely. So had the interview with that team and then joined the energy team. But while I was on that team, one of the other teams within cloud operations and innovation is the data center community development team. And that's basically deciding that Microsoft's presence in a community is going to be a positive one. When we build a data center, there's a lot of environmental impact that goes into that. We may displace either ecosystems or people, and we have an impact, and we want to overall make that impact positive. And so we had initiatives around social and economic development in those communities, but we didn't have an environmental one. And actually, I can't claim credit for being the one to notice that. It was another colleague, TJ DiCaprio, and she reached out to me and said, Holly, I think this is an opportunity. And that was kind of how she left it with me. And then I spoke with her more about it. And then I kind of developed what that role could look like, went to the general manager at the time and pitched the role and said, we don't have a community environmental sustainability program. I think we should. And I think that I should lead it. And so it took some going back and forth, but then he agreed. And then I was like, oh, wait, well, this means I have to actually do this. And so I started building the program. That was about 3 years ago. So I've been building the program ever since. And now I'm in, I think, 18 communities around the world with over, God, how many projects have I had? A lot of different sustainability projects. And it's a great role.
Kind of backtracking a little bit, could you tell us a little more about why the data centers are so important and why the communities around the data centers are so important?
Yeah. So if you've seen Microsoft's share prices, you know that we're doing well. And a lot of that is due to our cloud services. And those cloud services, it sounds all ethereal in the cloud, but the cloud is very physical infrastructure. They're real places with a lot of infrastructure around the world. And we're growing rapidly to meet the demand for cloud services. And, overall, this is a really good thing for sustainability for people to move to the cloud. It's much more efficient to have services in the cloud and have these kind of centralized places that host cloud services rather than every organization having their own little data center. So it is overall more efficient to move to the cloud, and we can source huge renewable energy projects and power our data centers with renewables and have some renewable energy credits. So like other renewables projects to account for all of the electricity that we use. But giant buildings full of servers and batteries and generators there, and soon to be not generators. But when we go into a community, we have to be cognizant of where we're placing these data centers. To have people want to actually work there, we have to look at a lot of different factors. And there's a whole team that looks at siting where they go. But previously, it's really just looked at like cost of land and can you get water and can you get electricity? And we haven't really looked before at like, what about the community? What does the community think of all this? So what my team does is we're embedding that into the process of siting where a data center is going to be, but also just then ensuring that once the data center goes in, we are doing right by the community. And the community, if they don't want us there because we're not doing good things for them, they'll make that known. And that can cause problems for us, but we don't want to be anywhere on the side of them not wanting us there. We want them all the way on the side of really appreciating our presence.
And by community, you mean like the local community where the data center is being placed?
Yeah, exactly. So like the people who live there, the school districts, the local governments, the nonprofit groups, the corporations, we try to listen to all their voices. Actually, just yesterday hosted what we call a Voice of the Community session in Des Moines, where we invite a bunch of different people from all sectors of the community and listen to their priorities on what they think is going really well in the community, what are their challenges, aspirations for 5 years out. And then we try to map our programs to those specific needs. So it starts with listening. It wouldn't really do any good if we're pushing projects on them that don't resonate with them, that aren't really relevant to them. It's just like a waste of effort and money. But yeah, it's really like the schools, the teachers, the people who live there. And that includes our data center employees too. They're part of the community as well. So involving them in that process.
Gotcha. So just making sure I'm hearing you correctly, your job is focused on making sure that these data centers are sustainable, not only for the environment, but for also the local community that they're in.
Common misconception. No, there is a team that works on environmental sustainability of the data centers, like energy efficiency. Let's look at the water that we use. Let's look at our land footprint and how we can give back. Increasingly, we're looking at really cool things about how to incorporate different biomimicry aspects to our data centers, or just really, really cool things around actually making the data center itself a positive for the ecosystem. But what I do is basically everything outside of the footprint of the data center itself. So I work with the local communities and understand their priorities for sustainability. So understanding what types of carbon, water, waste, or ecosystems projects would resonate with them in the community. So outside the footprint of our data center, it's like, let me give you some examples. It's like doing some solar projects with some local schools, along with an education program for the students on what solar is, why that's important, and doing like different energy challenges, doing different local water projects. We have one is like installing gutter bins in the local streets so that it collects all the trash that would otherwise go in the waterway. It's like really what's relevant to that community and like a community-based project. Or we also have our data center employees lead different projects. Like they lead some tree planting projects. We just had a couple in Des Moines last week where they planted a bunch of trees in the urban area. It's like really kind of runs the gamut because it's really what's most relevant to them, because people in Arizona are going to have different sustainability priorities than people in Amsterdam, than people in Singapore. So it's finding projects that are really relevant to that community.
So making a net positive good, no matter where we go to build our ginormous data centers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What are the areas that you cover?
Yeah, I mean, it's global. We have 21 communities this year, so a lot in the US, but then some in Europe. I mean, we have Ireland, then we have Netherlands, mostly in North Holland, but yeah, Singapore, I mentioned we've done a little bit in some stuff in South Africa, but in the US, we have like Cheyenne and San Antonio and now Atlanta this year. So it's a bunch of different communities. You can actually find all of the communities on the site, the Community Environmental Sustainability site. I think you can just type that into Bing and do the work tab and find that. We also just launched a public webpage, so a long time coming, but local.microsoft.com is the public webpage that talks about our team's programs, and you can go to sustainability to look up more stuff on my program.
Go check it out.
Yeah.
Local.microsoft.com. And another follow-up here is, with the COVID pandemic, how has that affected the communities and your work at all?
It affected the communities hard. A lot of people were out of work. It's been rough. I mean, luckily the work that I do, a lot of it is remote anyway, because I mean, I'm not like flying to Singapore every time I'm having a meeting with them. So a lot of it kind of just continued without much of a break. I would say something that we've done is added, at least in Des Moines is my focus, community. Each of us on the team also have a community that we lead as the community lead, but then we look at all types of projects in that community in our whole like toolbox of programs. But for Des Moines, we added mental health and family wellness as a focus area for Des Moines. That wasn't top of the list before of projects we were investing in, but through COVID, with people losing their jobs and then just being around their families so much more. But sometimes it's really hard situations where people need time away from their family and they weren't getting that. Like sometimes it's even so bad as abusive relationships or people with, family issues that are just not healthy. There's a real mental toll on that. So we added mental health and family wellness to our focus areas to contribute to organizations that are working in those areas, different mental health services, access to affordable housing or food. That's all part of family wellness. So that's been something we've been trying to do. Oh, we just had a whole extra push of funds that just we were able to scrounge up from different areas around CO and I and did a big extra fund specific for COVID related projects in many of our communities.
That's super cool. And I think a lot of people would also agree that we're thankful for the work that you do and the support that you provide too.
Thanks. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. Some really awesome work. What would you say has been the most fulfilling experience throughout the work that you've done so far?
It's just pretty cool to every day get to work with organizations on the ground, like real people doing real stuff to really help with sustainability. I mean, sustainability is super broad. The work I get to do is different every day, working just with so many different types of projects, and it can be really hard to keep it all straight. Luckily, I'm a fairly organized person, so I can keep it straight in different ways. But we also pretty startup team. We're growing. We actually have a position open right now in Sweden if anybody is living there or would move there for a community lead role. So we didn't really have all the sophisticated tools that some other teams have had that have been around for a long time. But that's always just fun because you get to create the tools and you get to be like, this isn't working. I'm not able to do this well in my job. Let me make something to make it better. And then you share it with your team and then they get to use it too, or they do the same thing. And then it's just so fun. It's a little startup experience, but then getting to actually do these sustainability projects. I got to visit some, pre-COVID and just see them in action is so great. Yeah, it's really nice. And getting to be involved in some of the projects, go actually plant trees. These organizations, either in local farmland or in urban areas, and actually get dirty and really contribute hands-on to these projects is super fun.
So people our age, was it Gen Z, zillennials per se, there has been this new thing going around called environmental anxiety because, climate change is pretty awful and the world's going to end in 50 to 100 years. Don't call me out on that. I studied finance in college, so I have no idea, to be completely honest. But I know that technology is a super hot industry for people to get involved in, especially coming out of college right now. But at the same time, people don't really realize, or there's not that basic connection that sustainability and technology work together. And I was wondering if you could give our audience kind of a holistic view of how technology and sustainability are intertwined and how to really push to get involved in sustainability by not getting involved in a nonprofit. Particularly,
working at a nonprofit is a great way to go as well. Absolutely. I'm not trying to knock working at a nonprofit. I think that's a great way to make change too. But working in a company and specifically in tech, this is a really topical question right now. Just because I feel it so much. There's a lot we can do as individuals for, of course, our own impact, our own personal footprints. But a bigger piece of that too is starting conversations and starting to help change culture. There's the argument against personal acts of sustainability, saying it literally is nothing. You are not doing anything by changing your own. And there's some visibility of that is very small, but I think it is very small, the things that you do on your own. But I think it's a yes and. Yes, you should look at your own personal footprint, but we don't have to think that that's where it ends. We can do that as well. That doesn't preclude you from also working on local initiatives, working on ballot initiatives, either on the federal level or in your local environment. That doesn't preclude you from volunteering with local organizations. That doesn't preclude you from asking your company to do more, pushing your company on, like, saying that now is the time. Like, we have known that climate change is an issue and that things are changing for a long time. It's been a long time we've known this, and we've pushed it off and pushed it off and pushed it off, and we are out of time. And I think younger people, and we're feeling this really starkly because our future is going to look a lot different. I mean, from everything from diseases becoming more widespread because mosquitoes that used to only live in a certain band around the equator, now that band is widening because the temperatures are rising. So we're going to have more disease. So, like, I mean, just everything. And the pictures we see every day are awful. And I would say, like, don't just shut that out, because that is also a form of denialism and denying the truth, but also we can't let it overwhelm us, and just know that there are so many people working on this, really smart people, but there are also still a lot of giant forces that are pushing us still in the wrong direction. But, like, asking the companies you work at, asking your school, if you're someone listening to this who is still in college or in high school, just asking your school what they're doing. Like, everyone needs to be in this, and we can't just keep looking around at, thinking that someone else is going to do it. We need all of us now. And luckily, like, there's so many people feeling this way. So you're so far from alone.
I really loved what you mentioned about not letting this overwhelm us, because I think one common sentiment is you look at the statistics and you look at what is being done with, like, trash waste, like rainforest burning, etc. And it makes us feel a little bit powerless, really, in this big environment. As you were saying, like, how much does recycling and sorting out our plastics really matter? So I was wondering, for those that are feeling overwhelmed, including myself over here, do you have any resources on the first steps to take, whether that's learning more or doing more or getting involved more? What are the best next steps?
Yeah, there are some awesome books about this. My favorite book of all time is called No Impact Man. It's by Colin Beavan. And I don't know about favorite book of all time, but it's a really, really good book. And I recommend people kind of start there, because it's funny and it's sad and it's real and it's a quick, fun read, but it really goes into, like, the personal side of things. And he talks about not just living with the world that's been handed to us, that involves so much waste and so much energy usage. And, like, we're handed this life. Like, this wasn't, like, our conscious choice to do it this way. This has been set in motion a long time ago. And he works at, like, cutting all of that out and then figuring out what really makes us happy and what he can bring in, like, make it worth it. If we're going to have this environmental footprint of things, be darn sure that it's worth the impact. And so I love that book starting there. He also then does this book called How to Be Alive, which is really good. It goes through a lot of things, one around parenting, sorts of climate anxiety for people, or just anxiety around, like, putting another human under this earth. But that doesn't mean that I can't be a parent, because you don't have to have your own biological children. He talks about you can parent by parenting your friends' kids or your siblings' kids, or, like, tutoring, or parent people who are older than you, and through volunteering. And it's just looking at things not from the lens that has just been given to us from our society. And I love that. Also, a few other books, Field Notes from a Catastrophe is a really good one. It's kind of depressing, but really good. Drawdown, of course, is a big one. It has 100 top solutions to reaching drawdown, which is the point where we not only stop emissions increasing, not just slowing that, but to the point where we're drawing down emissions from the atmosphere. So we have, like, a negative emissions curve. That one's really good.
Yeah. Takes a village. So I know that sustainability is typically viewed as its own subject matter in a way, but because climate change is all encompassing and it involves all 7 billion people on this planet, I know that scalability is probably the most important aspect to getting any kind of change done. And to make things scalable, you have to have a bunch of people on board. And to get a bunch of people on board, you have to create community, which is the work that you're currently doing. So what are some of like the main foundational ways that you've discovered that help best to cultivate community in order to really push those sustainability efforts?
Yeah, so I guess this verges on the topic of the formerly worldwide sustainability community. Currently, now we've rebranded as the Sustainability Connected Community, and that's the community of over 5,000 employees at Microsoft who are passionate about sustainability and are working on sustainability in so many different ways, from just in their personal lives to in their communities to really embedding it into what they do for work. And they may not have sustainability in their title, but the mission of the Sustainability Connected Community is make sustainability part of everyone's job. Say that you don't have to have sustainability in your job title to make change. And really that wouldn't even work anyway, to just have one piece of the company that's working on sustainability and then everybody else is just off the hook because we have, a few people that are working on it. Like, that's not enough. And so we have like 150,000 people at Microsoft. Now that's so many people that even if we just got a fraction of that to start thinking about how they can embed sustainability in what we do, that's huge. And so that's the mission of the Sustainability Connected Community. And, there are challenges to that. People, when it is a volunteer thing that they do, when quote unquote real work stuff comes up, it's going to be put on the back burner.
This kind of vibes with what Zach was saying along the parenting idea. It takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to accomplish anything. And it seems like the sustainability and anything where we want a win, especially an important one, definitely needs everyone's support so that when one falters a little bit, you have so many more people around the world and around you to kind of push you up. One more question, going back to the source here. Why is sustainability so important to you? And a follow-up there is, why should it be important to everyone else?
Sustainability, it's humanity's greatest problem that we've ever seen. It affects everyone, everywhere, everything. I mean, every race, every class, every culture, every species, every mega city to tiny village. It affects everyone. And it's really these problems are compounded onto each other with feedback loops that once they get started, they just feed upon themselves. And there's a time issue to this too, where what we do now is so much more important than even 5 years from now, even 3 years from now. And, would have been better to be working on this stuff 15 years ago, but here we are. And I mean, there's really no one issue that's so ubiquitous and has the potential for such devastating impacts. But I would say there is room for everyone to participate. I mean, everyone to participate. So that kind of makes it special too. I mean, I heard the quote one time. It was like, the world has a lot of illnesses, but that means we need a lot of doctors. So there's 3 things to think about to figure out what your role can be. And let's see if I can remember these 3. One is figuring out what you are good at. Figure out what skills do you have that you can bring to bear? Another is, what do you enjoy doing? What are the things that spark joy in you? What do you wake up in the morning and love doing? And then the third circle, I'm making a Venn diagram here, so you can see it. The third circle is what the world needs and kind of what sustainability aspects are needed to be focused on. literally draw this on a piece of paper. I've done it before. Those 3 circles of what you're good at, what you like doing, and what the world needs, then finding something in the middle of that is just so life enriching to find something within that. So there's another book called Making Good, Finding Meaning, Money, and Happiness in a Changing World that I recommend everyone read as well. I don't think it talks about those 3 circles, but really those concepts of like, basically you don't have to just be broke and alone to do something that matters. You can have a meaningful career. You can make a fine salary, but also salary is not everything, but that's a great book too. And one other book about social movements that I love is called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And it goes through the types of people that are needed for a social movement and like what's really needed for that. And it's really not that many people. Like you don't need every single person in the world to be in on it for a social movement to happen. His book really goes into that.
Awesome. So this question kind of diverges a little bit more from what we just talked about, but what's the most crucial aspect in developing a successful community?
I would say helping each other. This sounds very like all hold hands and run around in a circle, but it really is being willing to lend yourself to issues that may not be exactly what you're the best at. Like, don't be scared of helping, even if you don't think you're the exact right person for it. What really builds community is being able to reach out to others, just help with whatever you can, with connections with different people, or just give a little bit of your time, a little bit of your expertise. I heard somewhere it was like, we have time, talent, and treasure. So those are all different things that you could pull from to help build a community. And like what I try to do at the communities too is like kind of help build like connective tissue. That's what the sustainability community kind of is, like connective tissue across the company of people in all different parts of the company, or in the data center communities, all different places and ages and, organizations, but kind of seeing where people can be connected, because it's really amazing to see the connections that can happen that you didn't originally see. But if people are just willing to step a little bit outside their comfort zone, then amazing things happen.
Chef's kiss.
We have a list of 6 or 7 books. We have a list of things that you need to do, and we have just so many stories and of how to get involved and why sustainability is important.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to live in Sweden, hit up Holly.
Oh, hey, I have one more book that like changed my life and how I see everything. It's called Cradle to Cradle. I think it's by Michael Broomgart and William McDonough. And it's called Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things. And it's really about like circular economy principles, but it's so well written. It's like a story, but it really gets you thinking. It just like, God, it just changes the way you see the world. And now forever though, I'm like, why are we doing it this way? And I get so frustrated with the world, but it still is a great thing to do to open your eyes to how we could do things differently and have like more a regenerative economy. And anyway, that's one more book. That's super good.
Cool. I'm putting it on the list right now.
And always podcasts too. If you follow me on Spotify, I have a sustainability podcasts playlist and got a bunch on there.
This has been a fantastic conversation, Holly. Learned a ton from you, not only about data centers, sustainability, and communities in general, but very eye-opening conversation. It's a conversation that needs to be had more often, and thank you for being one of the leaders around the world for driving it. So kudos to you.
And go vegan, everybody. Or at least try.
2022 resolution.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an important topic. It's so far reaching, and just everybody has something that they could do. And I hope this is helpful at all to anyone to get more involved in. I'm happy to chat to you if anyone wants to reach out.
Thanks for listening to Upwards. Be sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform and leave us a review. Learn more about the Microsoft Aspire experience at aka.ms/Microsoft Aspire experience. We'll catch you next time on Upwards.